Hi mini Voyagers! As some of you guys know, I recently turned 22, and around my birthday I always tend to think back on old memories. So I thought I'd run after a bandwagon that has long since passed and draw my life. I was born on the 5th of May 1995. I was really hyped to get into the world, so I arrived a whole week early, but the first thing I did after opening my eyes was close them again, so I obviously wasn't very impressed. I had a mum, a dad, and a big brother who was nearly 3. Sadly, nobody remembers what my first word was. It's been lost unto time, so let's pretend it was something really clever and difficult, like glockenspiel or deoxyribonucleic acid. I don't remember much of being very little, although I remember my mum and dad getting divorced when I was 5. After that, my brother and I lived with my mum, and we saw our dad every other weekend. My mum was an accountant with her own business who always looked very stylish. My parents were very different people, but I was lucky enough to have a good relationship with them both. I was good at school, but didn't have many close friends until I started joining clubs. I thought my brother was super cool when he became a Cub Scout, so I followed him into the world of camping and badges as soon as my mum would let me. My sixer gave me my first ever nickname, Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, because of my tendency to bounce up and down when I'm excited. Yes, present tense, I'm still a human bouncy ball when I'm happy. But my favourite club was a drama club I went to almost every Saturday from the age of 7 to 14. I grew up with that club and really felt like I had lots of friends there. I learnt to sing, dance and act, things I'd loved doing since I was little, and my inner 10-year-old is so happy that they get to act and sing again now that I do YouTube videos. When I was 9, I went to my first ever comic convention, MCM Expo. This was 13 years ago, so the con was a fraction of the size and ticket cost, but I thought it was amazing. This was where I would first encounter anime, comic books, and most importantly of all, cosplay. By the time I was 11, I made my first ever cosplay, which was Misty from Pokemon. I had the most awful wig in the world, but I loved it, and I've never stopped making cosplay since. By the age of 14, I was starting to sew my own costumes. But it wasn't all fun. I also had to think about what I wanted to do with my life and choose my GCSEs. I was pretty sure I wanted to be a fashion designer or something to do with sewing, so I chose textiles and art, as well as German and religious studies, just because they were interesting. I nearly switched textiles for drama 2 weeks in because I thought I was bad at sewing. I wonder what kind of person I'd be if I'd stopped. That time was also very difficult for me personally. I'd just left a very unhealthy friendship and was growing ever more confused about my gender and sexuality, something I felt I couldn't talk about with family or friends. I used cosplay as a way of expressing myself that I simply couldn't do in my day-to-day life, and it was still so much fun, so it made me happy even when other things were making me feel low. I also made a really good friend called Rihanna, who's still one of my favourite people in the world. She was the Watson to my Holmes throughout my GCSEs, and we even dressed up as them on our final day. I get all my friends to try cosplay at least once. I loved my options and in the end did great in all of my subjects, except for PE, which I totally sucked at. So of course the logical option was for me to do A-levels in physics, maths, biology and English. Wait, let me explain. As a sci-fi nerd, I'd always loved space, and I was good at physics and maths, and being a scientist seemed like a much more realistic career plan than something to do with sewing. I'd keep making cosplays, of course, but it would only ever be a hobby. I thought I knew what was best, but thinking back, there were a lot of things I was denying for the sake of making people proud of me. I enjoyed some of my subjects, although there was a huge difficulty spike that I struggled to overcome. But for the first few months, I took it on the chin. Then, my whole world was turned completely upside down when, just a few weeks after her own mother died from cancer, my mum was also diagnosed and died 11 weeks later. It was awful watching such a beautiful, hard-working and intelligent woman fade away before my eyes. I don't believe that things happen for a reason. I think it would disrespect my mum's memory to say that her death was somehow meant to teach me a lesson. But loss does shape you, and I realised that life was too short and precious to be wasted. I knew I wasn't happy with what I was doing, and I needed to change things if I was going to live a life I was happy with. First was my career. I really hated the thought of working with maths for a living, but I didn't know what to do, or if anyone would take me seriously if I spoke about it. It was my brother who told me it was okay, and suggested I look into making costumes for a living, which really should have been obvious to me. Not everyone agreed with my decision at first, so I couldn't have made that leap without his support. I decided to finish my A-levels and then go to college to get a more relevant qualification. I also felt my gender identity crisis bubbling up again, and after searching the depths of both my soul and the internet, I discovered I was non-binary, specifically agender. I started experimenting with new names and pronouns with my friends, and eventually called myself Sean a few months into my college course. Although I was badly bullied by some of my classmates after coming out, I ultimately felt a lot more certain of who I was and happy in myself. My best friend Joking Penguin, Rihanna, and another close friend of mine, Jeannie, were all especially supportive while I worked it all out. From 2015 on, it's been a big blur of amazing, wonderful, exciting stuff. I started feeling more confident in myself as both a person and a costume maker, especially after being accepted into the country's top theatre school to study costume construction. I started making more elaborate cosplays, which people were actually starting to notice at conventions. I remember I sat down for no more than 15 minutes in 9 solid hours when I first wore Cardcaptor Sakura, because I was constantly being stopped for photos. Still the craziest cosplay experience I have ever had. I started cosplaying competitively last year, and I've fallen in love with that side of cosplay now. I even came second in my first international contest qualifier this February, which was awesome! And of course I made this YouTube channel. It's so much fun to share my love of cosplay and costume making with you guys, and rediscover how much I like to perform as well. I never thought I'd enjoy making videos as much as I have, and I can firmly say filmmaking is one of my favourite things too. I'm obviously not too terrible at it either, if the response to my 2 cosplay shorts so far is any indication. Thank you, Metaton! And that brings me to now, drawing my life for you all to see. I still feel a bit confused sometimes, but often about good things now. I still definitely deserve the nickname of Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, and I still love making costumes and cosplaying more than anything else in the world. Looking back has made me really excited for what's coming up ahead, so I'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this throwback YouTube formula, like and comment. You can subscribe for fortnightly cosplay content or check out my side channel where I post random things whenever I fancy it. You can check out my last video here and find all my social media links down below. Bye bye, mini Voyagers!